Using movement in labor can help labor speed up and for the contractions to hurt less. So for those two reasons, let's talk about the best ways, 20 of my top tips to make the most of moving and position changes in labor. I brought you to my happy place today, Green Lake. Are the ducks really loud today? They're like right there, the geese and the ducks. So when do we start moving in labor? Do we start changing positions as soon as we feel the first contraction? As soon as we feel like we have a rhythm, is that when we start changing positions? This is a question I get all the time, and it's a great one. And what I'd like to say is you start actively dealing with labor when you need a way to cope. So when labor is like serious, you're no longer kind of doing your same old routine or whatever you're doing, and you really have to stop for a moment, that's a great time to start thinking about the positions that you're going to be in labor. So before then, just ignore it. But once that becomes serious, then time to use movement to your benefit in labor. So I often get the question, how often should I be changing positions in labor? And I think it's commonly misunderstood that you should be changing like every contraction or every 5 minutes or so. That is way too much. So as a general rule, when I help someone as a doula, I say about every 20 to 30 minutes. So there's no hard, fast rule, but that's a good general rule of thumb to live by when you're in labor. So many times I have worked with clients where they say, as soon as I got up from a laying down position, as soon as I got out of bed, my contractions didn't hurt as much. I was able to cope with them better. And this is such important information that I feel like people are not telling you about. So you've got to know that your contractions will likely hurt less if you're upright. So, or if you're not leaning back, if you're leaning forward. So if you can remember one takeaway as labor approaches, get out of bed, get upright, and move. Dads and partners can be so helpful in using movement in labor. The thing that they can do is give a suggestion. The thing about it is when you're in labor, you are not thinking about what position should I do next? What haven't I done? How long have I been on my left side or my right side? But dads and partners, this is great for you. So if you can give a suggestion like, how about the birth ball next? How about after that next contraction, you go labor on the toilet? Let's give that a try. That is going to be so much better than asking a question. So what you don't want is to say, hey babe, do you want to sit on the birth ball? Or do you think now's a good time to walk in labor? Go for a walk? You don't want to ask a question. Asking a question can send the person in labor into a real spin in their brain. So just giving a suggestion can be so helpful to the person that's laboring, can go like, yeah, let's do it. One of the categories of movement that I highly recommend is asymmetric movements. So that means that both of your legs are not doing the same thing. And a great one is the Captain Morgan. So putting your leg up and you have one foot going to your right in this example. My other foot is pointed straight out. So they're at right angles to each other. So doing asymmetric movements like this are a great way to open up the pelvis on one side. And I would definitely add asymmetric movements into your routine that you're going to be doing in labor. The next tip has to do with asymmetric movements. When you're doing these, make sure that you even yourself out. Okay, so if you spend time, let's say 15 minutes with your right leg up, make sure you switch and change to your left leg up. This is a great thing for your partner to remind you about. So partners, if you look at the clock and you say 10 minutes on the right, switch and do 10 minutes on the left. Now, it is not uncommon that these asymmetric movements can make contractions feel stronger. So if you change your position and you find that all of a sudden your contractions feel stronger in that position, this is another tip. But that's actually a really good thing. We're trying to make labor progress. I mean, nobody wants a slow labor, right? So sometimes if you're in labor, you're gonna feel like, oh no, I don't wanna do that position because it just got more intense, or the contractions just got closer together. But that's actually like a jackpot. When you change a position and you see a change in labor like that, where they're either stronger or they're longer or they're closer together, that's a great thing. So position changing in labor, we all know that it is helpful, it can help reduce pain, but what's the magic formula? Like, give me the step-by-step, which positions did I start with, and then what's next, all the way until either I'm ready to push or I'm ready to get an epidural. I wish I could give you that combination. It doesn't exist. We all have to just try. Just try things, see if they work. That's what we all do, even doulas. I remember when I was a newer doula, I worked with a client who found out that she needed to be induced. And she called, we were talking things over, what was that going to look like? And she was so devastated that she wasn't going to be able to move in labor. That she was, she said, my whole idea for labor has totally changed. I'm going to be stuck in the bed now. And I was like, whoa, time out. That is not the case. Just because you're being induced does not mean that you're going to be stuck in the bed. Like, I think people get that idea in their head that they're just going to be like laying down, sort of in that semi-reclined position, and that's going to be their labor. So that's not the case. When you're being induced, you do have a few things that are limiting. You have an IV usually if you're having a Pitocin induction. So you have, a tube into your arm and you have a pole. Well, that pole can be moved. And I have worked with clients where we have brought that pole all over, all sorts of positions, into the bathroom. A lot of times you're even able to labor in the water in the tub if you have the pole and all of your monitoring that is able to be submerged in water. So also, if you have to be on the bed for some reason, maybe, who knows? Let's just say you had to be on the bed, had to be in bed or on the bed for some reason, there are still lots of positions, lots of options that you can do on the bed. So don't just throw in the towel on movement and say you can't move anymore just because you are going to have to be induced. So if you're planning an epidural, that's great. What I don't want you to do, though, is to forget about moving in labor. A couple things. You can move before you get the epidural. So think of pre-epidural, the time that you can be outside of the bed. These are the time to use things you've probably learned in childbirth class or maybe on this channel about sitting on the ball and doing slow dance with your partner. Think about getting those in before you get an epidural. Then, after you get the epidural, you can use movement in the bed as well. Now, I really want you to be sleeping and resting if you get an epidural, but you can get your labor and delivery nurse to help you, maybe even with a peanut ball, and get your body moving. And movement in labor does not stop just because you get an epidural. When it comes to movement in labor, one thing I'd really like for you to remember is to mix active positions with restful positions. So you don't want to just be like walking all the time and trying to do lunges and get on the birth ball and do hip movements. That's going to wear you out. Really kind of do a couple active and then some restful positions. So take time to sit on the bed, sit on your couch, maybe lie down, anything that's restful. You definitely want to mix up with your actives so that you can keep going and keep your energy up in labor. So walking in labor can be an amazing way to move. And sometimes I'll have clients that will pack their running shoes so that they can walk comfortably in the hospital. But what you don't want to do is wear yourself out. One of the absolute easiest things, easiest movements in labor, easiest positions is the forward lean. Leaning forward usually feels so much better than leaning back. And so I feel like that should be your go-to position. The one that is that first comes to your mind when you start feeling contractions that you really have to deal with. So whether that is at home, if you're laboring at home, or whether you're being induced and contractions finally pick up, that forward lean should be your top. And you can do it in so many different ways. So the birth ball, it is not just for sitting on. Actually, I love using the birth ball for leaning on. It's one of my favorite ways to use the birth ball. You can kneel and lean on it. You can take the birth ball, put it up on something higher like the hospital bed and lean on it that way. When you're leaning on it, you can really get a good rhythm. It is an excellent way to use this tool. It's not just for sitting on it, but what I want you to remember is cover up that plastic. When you are at the hospital and you're putting the birth ball on the hospital floor, kind of gross, right? And then you want to lean on it, So a great way to cover up the birth ball super easily is to grab an extra hospital gown out of the cabinets. Totally okay, you can use that. And just throw the hospital gown over the ball. So that way you have a nice protective layer between that plastic that's been rolling around on the hospital floor and your face. And being able to lean on that, it is a really awesome way, really awesome positioning in labor. Okay, so speaking of the hospital floor, all of those positions that you might see on videos here or in books that show someone kneeling on the floor or sitting on the floor, anything on the floor, just know that you can do that up on the hospital bed. So you don't have to be on the dirty hospital floor. You can be up on the hospital bed and do all of those kneeling positions, and they are excellent positions. So don't cross those off your list because you think you're going to be on the hospital floor. When contractions are really intense, one thing I see people do a lot, and it's super natural, and that is to keep their knees closed. So if you are leaning against the wall and you have your legs closed together, it's almost like you are bracing against the contraction. That's not going to help our baby descend through the pelvis. So you want to do is have nice open legs, think about almost lining up your feet with your shoulders. So I have something to admit. I never really liked the slow dance position. I kind of made fun of it. It looked so much like an 8th grade dance situation. And it wasn't until several years into my doula career that I realized that I was thinking about slow dance really wrong. Like, the slow dance position is one that takes a little bit of effort to get right. So I think that you have to kind of make adjustments and figure out what kind of lean you're leaning on your partner, what kind of you're working with your height differences, and do you put your head on your partner's chest? Do you put your head on your partner's shoulder? How are you really making that position work? And I think it takes some adjustment. But man, when you get it right and it feels comfortable and your partner is able to take a load, some of that weight that you're bearing off, and it's not killing your partner's back, which is also adjustment that sometimes has to be made, that position can be so golden. The thing that is cool about that position that a lot of people, I think, maybe don't think about is it really is that close connection between you and your partner. And a lot of times a close connection like that can actually help increase the oxytocin. An increase in the oxytocin can increase your contractions. So you're feeling that love, that connection with your partner with a really good slow dance position, and that's just going to help your labor progress and get you closer to meeting your baby. So I was working with this couple one time. They are having their first baby. Labor was kind of like not stalled, but it wasn't changing. And we knew that, it had been some time. She was getting tired. Probably was a good idea to try to figure out how to get labor to start progressing. So we were trying different positions. We were being really intentional of kind of going through what are different positions that we can try. And we got to one of my favorite positions, which maybe some people don't think of it as a position, but it is a position, and that's the toilet. So sitting on the toilet is an excellent position. I've seen it many times, actually. You sit on the toilet, you got your pants down, nice and relaxed pelvic floor, and all of a sudden you get a really strong contraction on the toilet, which if you're experiencing it, it might seem like you don't want that, but it's actually a really good thing because a nice intense contraction gets us closer to having our baby. So that's what happened with this client of mine. She tried so many different positions, and it wasn't until she was on the toilet, experienced a contraction, and she looked at us and she said, that was the strongest contraction yet, and I don't want to go back there again. I don't want to be on the toilet anymore. And so her partner and I looked at each other like, in this knowing way, like, that's really a good thing, even though she doesn't want to have the strong contractions. We know that's what she's hoping for. So what we did is we said, those are great. How about we do, like, every few contractions, sit on the toilet? And that's what we did. My client ended up embracing the toilet because she just found her rhythm. So she stayed on it. And all of a sudden, she was feeling the urge to push. So she turned the corner that she needed, and the toilet really made it happen. It was amazing. I hope you liked today's tips. Thanks for joining me here at my favorite place. I am off to get some coffee. I'm in Seattle. I'm going to put a video right here that I know you'll like to check out next. See you next time. Bye, guys.